Hi, I'm Edmund Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles. The show allows you to eavesdrop on the conversation of fellow film fanatics.
What happened to your mustache?
I don't know.
Come on, fucker.
Hey, it's summertime's coming up. All right, well let's get into this show. You derail the fucking show every time, you assholes.
So we talking about Mad Max movies?
What are we talking about?
Or are we talking about Invasion of the Body
Let me
Snatchers?
introduce.
Which one?
This is Eric Cohen, this is Jeff Galashaw, and this guy over here, the snappy-ass guy over here.
Is that the camera? That's the camera.
That guy?
All right, yeah, that guy over there.
I want to have a T-shirt made "Snappy Ass Guy." I would love that.
You're
What is
fruity
your
ass.
name, though?
Snappy Ass Guy.
Okay,
That's the snappy-ass guy. In fact, I want that credit to be changed to snappy-ass guy every time he comes up. Okay. Well, before I begin, let me say,
You already began.
well, before I get into this conversation, be sure to check out the CineFiles blog, which I know they will display here for us, and our YouTube page. If you're watching this on YouTube, get off your ass, subscribe, and rate this video. Okay? And we're also on Facebook individually.
There we
fan
are.
page, everything. Please put this up throughout the show. We'd really appreciate it. And remind people to come visit us there. Anyway, let's get into this today. This was another request from you, the fans, on the Facebook discussion page. And by the way, we really appreciate all of your suggestions. We're taking some of them, and
But first, I want to issue a challenge to our fans. If we
Take
get
the stage.
1,000 subscribers, Edwin will regrow his mustache.
Yes!
Yes.
Who is with me?
All right, I'll tell you what. We have 578
Oh, that's
subscribers
not
on YouTube right
so-
now. I will grow my mustache back if we
I
get
will shave
1,000.
my beard if we get 1,000 subscribers.
And Mike, you will button that shirt and hide that chest hair. if we
I
get
will
1,000.
wear. If we get 1,000 subscribers, I will wear turtlenecks for the next taping.
All right, very good. And Eric, what will you do?
I will do absolutely nothing.
All right, that's good enough for me.
He will wear sneakers the next statement.
No.
Mr.
She
Cohen.
will change outfits. That will be good. That would be hysterical.
Oh, God.
Okay, well, let's get into this day. You viewers demanded it, and we're here, and we're going to do it today. That is the Mad Max show. As you know,
And if we get 2,000 subscribers, Ed will finally get circumcised.
too late for that, my friend.
Too much information there.
Too much for that. Too much information for that. All right, well, let's get into this. All right, in 1970s, oh man, you just derailed me. In the 1970s, George Miller, a doctor, a surgeon at an ER, actually wanted to fulfill his dream of becoming a filmmaker. And he took his money that he had, I guess, from being a doctor, which you make quite a bit of money if you're an emergency room surgeon, and he decided to create a film which, I gotta say, was very unique, very much unlike anything at the time, and the film was Mad Max, which really showed an unusual post-apocalyptic viewing
Not
of the
yet.
future. I mean, the
Not
beginnings
yet.
of
It
it, the
was,
beginnings of it, the beginnings of it. And
Maybe
of course,
yeah, I guess on the verge of a societal
basically the economy was about to collapse. And it introduced us, of course, to our very favorite anti-Semite, Mr. Mel Gibson.
There were no Jews in that film.
Yes, no Jews in that film. And actually, the film, when
homosexuals.
it was released in America, unfortunately, was picked up by my favorite company of all time, American International, by Samuel Zarkov, and he decided
To dub it.
to redub it into English. But they were already speaking English, but they wanted a more American. So even though I think Mel Gibson spoke pretty good English at the time,
That's the only bad part of Mad Max is that fucking dub. That
well, they
is
did
so
correct
horrible.
it. It is corrected on the DVD. It is
See,
the original
I was
Australian dub.
raised on the non-dub version because I was living in Europe when that
You
came out.
bitch.
You.
I'm sorry. So I didn't understand that when I was told, oh yeah, Mad Max. The only problem is it's like really badly dubbed, and I'd be like, what the hell are you talking about? It wasn't dubbed. What are you talking about? It's an Australian movie. Good. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, anyway, Mel Gibson was very young, and the reason actually he was cast in this
Young
film,
and handsome.
he was a good-looking guy.
Woo!
Okay.
Okay, I don't know where that came
Sorry,
two
I
boners
just had a
up.
Carell flashback.
All right.
Go on.
Yeah, Corral. That's pretty frightening there, man. Okay.
Wait, was
back
that
on
Perel
topic.
or Corel?
Back on topic. All
Sorry.
right. Mel Gibson was cast in
This
this
is
film
not going well.
because he was actually in a barroom fight the night before, because, you know, as everyone knows, he's a major alcoholic, and his face was all beaten up and everything. But they said he still looked pretty good, and they said, well, if this guy looks this good when he's beaten up, and which he's probably going to be beaten up in this movie, let's cast him. So that's how he got the role as Mad Max, or Max Rostenkowski, I believe was his name. I cannot remember.
The good old days of casting.
Yeah, the good old days of casting. And Max plays a cop trying to keep the this decaying civilization in order, but basically gives up and goes with his wife.
Last of the Interceptors.
And yeah, he goes on his trip. He goes on the Toe Cutter. Let's not forget about him.
Toe Cutter. Well, Toe Cutter was the bad guy.
Yeah, he's a bad guy. But
there's Knight Rider.
Max actually takes a little vacation with his family, and his family is killed by a group of these motorcycle gang.
Well, first off, it's his buddy Goose gets killed. And then he's had enough. He's like, that's it, my buddy's got killed. I don't want to be part of this anymore. So he cashes his chips. He decides to retire. He takes his family. They're going to go somewhere where they won't be bothered by civilization. And then they get killed by the biker gang.
It's a really vague storyline on what exactly is going on.
Very weak story.
Because, well, it's not a weak story.
I wouldn't say it's weak. I like the vagueness.
It's just very vague. You got to kind of maybe fill in a little bit of what's going on and maybe use your own imagination a little bit, because it doesn't really feel like Society on the Brink, because when he's out in the country with his child and his wife, it looks pretty nice. It's pretty pastoral, and it doesn't look like you get these like renegade gangs, and the only thing that dawns on you is ooh, nobody's really stopping them. Maybe they do have way too much power, and maybe there is something wrong with the greater society, that these gangs are such a band of marauders. But the
big thing that we should also mention is, like, one of the big influences on this film was that Australia has an enormous car culture. And if there was like a film that might have influenced this film, it was a Peter Weir film, The Cars That Ate Paris.
I think another film that really set the idea of the apocalyptic world, and I don't know if this gets talked about much, would be L.Q. Jones's A Boy and His Dog, which I really believe is the template for this film.
The film with Yul Brynner.
The Ultimate
Warrior. The Ultimate Warrior you can see a little bit of that.
But this is the first
one. Would you say with Mad Max or
no? I'm right. Shut up. So you'd have it here. Let me.
A Boy and His Dog.
Could you just let me button?
Get up, down.
Here, button that, please.
Button that button.
I can't. I feel like I want to walk over and just scratch that chest.
Leads too. Oh, I'm sorry. Go on.
Thank you, Jack Harkness.
I don't think this will be a fan favorite episode.
The worst
There'll be more like
you've ever done. We're talking about Mad Max.
Anti-homosexual.
Racist.
How'd you make Mad Max so
homophobia.
gay? So anyway, go on.
Let's show my
Love those
Yeah,
leather
fun editing
chaps.
job on this one.
What were we talking about?
Mad Max.
They had this like incredible car culture. But the thing that like fascinates me about this movie was that the people they hired to do the stunts were not professional stuntmen. These are guys who are just kind of learning it as they were going, and these guys are willing to do anything.
It's like,
no
yeah, I'm on film, baby. And
no safety precautions.
The movies, I get crazy in Australia.
Oh, no, that is Australia. If you want to be, if you want to.
See, there's a great documentary. There's a great documentary called Not Quite Hollywood about the whole Australian exploitation scene they get into Mad Max. It's fascinating.
It's a really good, if you love films, it's a great documentary.
If you want to be in my gang, stand up with me.
Mike, okay.
I'll give you a soundtrack.
Yes, I also want to give credit to Eric. Wrote an excellent review of the movie on our CineFiles.
Thank you, Mr. Memory. That would be me who wrote the excellent review on our blog of Not Quite Hollywood.
Sorry.
All missed quotes and facts. Okay, I will say my 2 cents about Mad Max.
Go ahead. See, I almost called you Eric. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm Eric now? Oh,
Jeff,
God, I guess. From my European upbringing, I will say that watching the Mad Max movies, I've watched them in reverse, actually. I saw the third one.
You're always doing that.
I'm a modern-day film fan. I watched the last one, then catch up. And so I saw Beyond Thunderdome first, and then I saw The Road Warrior and Mad Max. And unfortunately, watching it in that order, Mad Max isn't as good to me as the other films are. I mean, it's not a bad film. It's an interesting film, but I couldn't really get into it, especially because one of my best friends, Mad Max, all three of the whole trilogy are his favorite films of all time. And, he had always told me about, how good the first one was, and I avoided the first one because I had a feeling I would have that reaction. And when I watch it today, I'm like, it's an interesting film, don't get me wrong. Lots of talent. George Miller's an interesting director when he's in the Mad Max world, but I just found it a tad bit disappointing. But I feel like the ending definitely spawned some of the worst films of all time, the Saw series, when he has the guy handcuffed to was it the car?
Yeah, to the car.
And
But that's
gives
a
him
brilliant
song.
ending. You shouldn't blame
I'm not
George
saying
Miller
I'm
for
not blaming George Miller. I'm just saying
Well,
that
loud.
unfortunately
We
the
know, and
producers-
you don't like trilogies.
Well, the thing is this,
so-
I like trilogies. It's just I
Well,
don't like Sam Raimi trilogies all the time.
The Mad Max series, actually, I think, like, I agree with you, Jeff. I think on this one, the problem for me is, like, the story is a little, it's just a very rough outline of a story. The reason to see this movie is the car stunts. They're pretty damn
I don't think
impressive.
it's. I think the rough. I gotta defend that here. I think Mad Max is a really good film. I think it's if you hold it up against a lot of like quote unquote post-apocalyptic science fiction films that are made up to that time, Mad Max kicks a lot of their asses.
Well, the
But
one I gotta say, A Boy and His
call
Dog.
it a post-apocalyptic.
it's an
can't.
almost post-apocalyptic.
Yeah, it's like-
It's just a vision of a near
What?
future where society, you just see society
It's
on the
about to
cusp
collapse.
of breaking down and collapsing, and it's a compelling revenge tale. You know, it's all those elements that we associate with like exploitation plots. You know, its plot is no less complex or more complex, whatever, than
Let's
any
put
other
it this way:
exploitation film
if
that
you're
came out
going to
at the
give
time.
a credit for Mad Max for anything, just say it's giving you a taste of the world that we are going to see. It is presenting this character who has so many layers and who is so compelling, but yet this mysterious hero that the world of film is being introduced. I mean, Mad Max alone should get kudos.
It's
for
original
that.
character. Well, let's get. I mean, this one I have mixed feelings about, but the next film, which I have to say, I will go on record, I think is probably the most amazing stunts ever filmed on film ever, and that is Mad Max 2.
There are
AKA The Road Warrior.
There are so many accolades and compliments
Just the
that
best.
I could throw at this film. You know, on the show that we did before on the Evil Dead trilogy, Eric had made the proclamation, and I had seconded the motion that Evil Dead was one of his all-time favorite films of all time. The Road Warrior is one of my all-time favorite films. It is one of the most quotable films. It has some of the best action scenes. It has some of the best camera work.
And
it has
characters.
it has some of the most memorable characters. It has some awesome acting.
The Ayatollah of rock and roller. I'm just going to say that since you quoted me, thank you very much, from our last episode, I did say Evil Dead 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time. Road Warrior is one of my favorite movies.
Make up your
of all
mind,
time.
motherfucker.
No, I could have like 10 or 20 favorite movies of all time. This is one of them.
Oh, sure.
I love it too.
It's another one of the best movies of the 80s. It's also probably possibly one of the top 5 best action movies ever.
And this
I
is
will
the
agree.
one. This is the
Ever
one.
made.
This is the one that that influenced more than any other films. I mean, Italy made so many of these post-nuke films, like The Bronx Warriors, 2019 After the
Great
Fall of
movies.
New York.
I was going to also say that it's also quite possibly the most perfect film ever made, if you really think about it.
From start to
in
finish.
terms of construction, in terms of script, in terms of shot, camera work, in terms of
stunts.
narrative, performance, everything is absolutely perfect.
And you know what I love
most of
too?
the film
It's a
is
film that
nonstop
film
action.
students should study.
And you know what I love?
actually.
You know what I love too? I love the relation. No, you know what I love about this
Study
film?
study every facet of the
Everything
film.
about it. It's the textbook case in how to make a good movie.
One of my favorite little moments in this movie, and I think it's very clever, is the scene with Vernon Wells and his boyfriend. You know, the guy really built up. Vernon Wells, of course, who was in a lot of other films, is you know what I'm talking about, where he has this man slave, and I think it's really interesting to see this in the film. And of course, let's not forget Master Blaster. Not Master Blaster.
Lord Humongous.
Humongous.
The Ayatollah of rock and roller.
Yeah, he was.
The Lord of the Wasteland.
away. Just walk away.
Walk away. We want the
I have a sort of
gasoline.
funny story to tell about.
Oh,
That's Mad
there was
Max
actually,
Trilogy.
I'm sorry, but there was
Road
actually a
related.
pro wrestler later on called Lord Humongous that used to fight Jerry Lawler all the time, and he wore the hockey mask.
I was going to say that I have a friend. I haven't talked with him in a while. I have no idea what he's doing this day. He was an actor buddy of mine.
Glenn.
And Glenn. And he did the single funniest audition piece I've ever seen. And what his audition piece was, the opening narration to The Road Warrior.
Oh, with the kid, of course, who's now grown
but
up.
instead of doing it as that, the grown-up feral kid voice, he was just like, I remember The Road Warrior. I remember blah, 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 blah. And that's all. It was just hilarious. Anyways, that's the story. So,
I love, let me tell you what also I love about this movie. I love how, Max has changed into this very, bitter person just searching the wasteland for gasoline. That is basically his mission, gasoline, and to find it. And he meets these people, and he basically uses them. But somehow his conscience changes.
It's the
and I like
classic
the way
samurai tale.
I was
is,
going to say,
you
it's
know?
you could also make an argument that it's one of the great postmodern Western tales, too.
It's the Western, it's the samurai tale,
I mean, he's the man with no name.
And
He is
this
the man
one,
with no name.
another another person this movie very much influenced, and I don't care what anyone says, is Jim Cameron, because there's a lot. That last scene on the tanker truck is very much like some of the scenes in Terminator 2.
I'm sure.
Unbelievable,
James
too.
Cameron, when this film came out, he probably saw it multiple times.
Yeah, it's definitely the most action-packed finale. I mean, that last half an hour, 45 minutes is probably the most perfect choreographed action scene ever filmed on film, and it was all done for real. And
it's got a great payoff.
Yes, it does, and I love the payoff.
And, you know, it's not a Hollywood payoff either. It kind of ends with this bittersweet ending, but it completely makes sense. But it's not one of those things where you're up in the, you know, your seats and going rah rah. You're like, it makes sense.
And this is the film that actually, I mean, really broke Mel Gibson into the stratosphere and made him a household name, and it rightfully so did, because he's terrific, and it's probably the best thing I think he's ever done.
I hated the feral kid, though. I hated that
I didn't
kid.
really like him either.
Because
I
I
thought
don't
the
like
feral
this
kid-
little monkey kid. I hated him. But I don't really like kids playing a major part in films. I usually don't
But
like
I
that.
mean, you still feel that way, or first time you saw
No,
it?
he's like an ugly little kid, and now I don't mind him at all. But when I first saw the film, I didn't like the kid,
Okay.
and I didn't like the fact that
music
he was
box.
really good with the silver boomerang.
And the guy
But then it
catches
was kind of cool, and then it's like, I got it.
That was pretty fun.
And I thought it was
I
really
like
well
that.
set up. I didn't think it was. You didn't figure out it was him telling the story.
No,
from the
of
very
course
end. I thought
not,
that was
no.
very. I thought everything about this film was just right.
I love Max's gun, the double-barreled shotgun that he saws off.
Oh, and we got to mention one thing. We forgot one of our
and it
favorite-
doesn't. It's a cool gun, and it hardly ever works.
We forgot one of our favorite characters in this movie, and I can't believe we did. The helicopter pilot. What is his name?
He also played the Mouth of Sauron.
He didn't have a name. He was just
Lord
on
of the
the
Rings.
He was a helicopter guy. Yeah, that was. I forgot his name.
I think he got a name in the second or in the third film.
But he wasn't the same character.
No, he was the
technically.
same character in the second and third
No,
film. Yeah, he was.
wasn't. No,
Yeah, because he still had the helicopter.
No, he didn't.
Neil Marshall obviously borrowed a lot from this film to make the piece of shit he made
Doomsday.
with Rona Mitri.
Yeah.
Mitra, whatever.
And I love that where he's pulled out of the wreckage by the helicopter pilot, and he's like, "Isn't that right, partner?" And you get that close up on his face. And
Oh, and
he's got that awful
I love
teeth.
when Mel Gibson actually just has him imprisoned and stuff, and is using him as a slave. It's such a great payoff. This whole scene, how it builds up. You see the movie.
With the
If
snake.
you haven't seen
This
it.
is a
It's
definite
great.
must-see.
It's a definitely must see. In fact, the Blu-ray looks incredible. I have to say, if you can see it on the Blu-ray.
When is that out?
It's out already. It's one of the best looking restorations of a movie I've ever seen. It really, and the sounds.
Well, is there
wow.
extras on there?
Yes, there's a little documentary.
Finally.
Yeah, and it has a commentary. Oh, it's incredible.
Well, now, what did you say? Will Dearborn or the guy that plays the Mohawked
Oh,
berserker?
Vernon Wells.
Vernon Wells.
Vernon Wells.
Who had
Who reprised his role in,
In
of course,
Weird
Weird Science.
Yeah, but he also had the role as the enemy of John Matrix in the Arnold Schwarzenegger Raw Deal. No,
Yeah.
not Raw Deal. The
Commando.
Commando.
Let off some steam, Bennett.
Yeah.
And of course he's also in Inner Space. Has a very good role in Joe Dante's Inner Space.
Okay.
But let's get into the next one. The next one actually was a very troubled production.
We don't need another hero.
It's
2 men enter, 1 man leave.
what's so sad about this film is that it could have been a lot better, but unfortunately George Miller suffered a very, very tragic loss during the making of this film. While they were scouting for locations, he lost his best friend and partner, producer Brian Kennedy, in a helicopter crash. And afterwards, he really didn't want to direct the film. So they got another director to come in and do the dialogue sequences, and George Miller stayed around and just did the action scenes.
It is Mad Max 3 Beyond the Thunderdome is a much better film. When I first saw it, I didn't like it. But when I went back and I saw it upon multiple viewings, it gets better and better every time I see it. It is.
I think it's very underrated.
It is a
I
very
really don't
underrated
surprisingly
film.
like it a lot.
I really don't like it as much as because the problem I have is that I will say it does have one of the most brilliant battles in movie history. I have to say, I'm talking man-on-man combat with Master Blaster, and of course Mad Max. And I loved how you have the big mass, the big guy who's strong, and then you have his brains on his shoulders. And I thought that was a really clever, just a brilliant.
It's got a great climax.
It's a great idea.
Who Rule Bartertown?
Who Rule Bartertown?
I have to say
Bartertown?
that as a progression of what we've seen in the first two films of where the world has gone, I think it completes that in a lot of ways. And I think that there's a lot of enough bizarro stuff in there that keeps
the first 20
keeps
minutes.
you completely.
The first 20 minutes, you get to see just what a hard, smart fucker Mad Max is.
Yes, the first 20 minutes are probably the best part of the entire film. But you know what? I understand what the complaints are. I had a problem too with the kids, the
they're
community
annoying.
kids and stuff. But like that was only because me being a wise ass fan of the original films.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, he's going all Spielberg on us, you know.
Yeah.
But now I'm got that stigma out of the way. Going back to it, I can like look at the film on its own merits and
It's a
recognize it's
PG-13
actually a
film.
very well-made film.
But you also see too that it's George Miller's subversive take on the Peter Pan Lost
Yes.
Boys.
Yes, it is. They are the Lost Boys. That's
Yeah.
what they even said. They actually made it. They had a different story. Suppose that's the rumor, where it was about these kids and they needed a savior and a protector. And of course, they said, well, let's make it Mad Max, and that's supposedly what happened. I don't know if that's true, but that's the rumor. But the film is a troubled production. I mean, I wish George Miller would have directed from beginning.
But
to
it doesn't
end.
show on the film. I would have never known it was a trouble production.
Very interesting movie. Lots of like hills and valleys, but the valleys aren't that low, and they're still much more interesting than everything else that you get to see. You know,
And I do love. I gotta say, Tina Turner is very good in this movie.
She's very good.
Exactly.
And a little trivia note that I'm sure you guys don't know, but the tattooed bald servant of Tina Turner, Tauntaun, with the big back tattoo. If you see the documentary Not Quite Hollywood and you hear the theme song We Can't Be Beaten, he is the lead singer of Rose Tattoo who sings that.
Oh, there you go. I did not know that.
Well,
I did not know that.
As you said, there's like a lot of weird scenes. Like one thing that always struck me was when they punish him, they put on this big dummy head and leave him out in the desert riding a
Yeah, it's like a
horse.
big mascot head.
Yeah, and it was like, I was just like, who thinks of stuff like that?
And it's ingenious how, you saw the progression,
Gulag.
like how they find like everyday items, like, and they incorporate it into like these new useful items, like
Pig
the
shit.
mascot head, or
Pig shit into
or
the
stuff like
energy.
that, and I think it's a really, and no, you're wrong. The actor who plays the airplane pilot, or like whatever,
Yeah, but
it's not the same character.
His name of the character is the Chopper Pilot.
Well,
But I thought it was the same
It's
character
not.
because he's got the kid from
He could be.
the affair that he had with the girl.
They could
from
be.
the,
I do agree with him. I think he could be the character, but
when
they
they
never
made
go
this
out of his way to
film,
do
they
it.
were very insistent in saying it's not the same character.
I
He's
don't.
playing a different
I
character.
disagree. I think it is the same character.
They don't recognize each
He's
other.
got the same. He's got the same little helicopter that he's on again, and.
No, he didn't have a
He didn't
helicopter.
have a helicopter.
Oh,
this
okay,
one.
whatever.
Well,
But,
I think this of the original trilogy, this is I think the weakest.
And he didn't wear a pith helmet in the last one.
Goggles.
See, I don't know if I can.
I just think the kids are what annoy me, and like they go, we're gonna go to
didn't think
this
they were that
place,
annoying.
paradise.
But what's wrong with that? I mean, the world is shit, and these little orphans. I mean, you follow the story makes sense, and also it's got that beautiful scene where he just enters Bartertown, and they make him check his weapons. It's just so
Well, you know what's
fucking
funny?
awesome.
I do like
it's
how they
really
created
awesome.
that Bartertown, the Bartertown. I thought was fascinating. Like you said, with the everyday items, and a movie that really ripped this movie off completely. Which is, by the way, a piece of shit for everyone. So don't watch it. Solar Babies. Very.
I don't think there was really a risk of anybody going to see that.
Oh God, is that bad? But that's a ripoff of
Solar Babies is so unmemorable that I can't even.
I remember it.
Oh, I remember it because all the famous actors who were in it, and just like, how the hell could this movie be so shitty? And it was
But
produced,
see, one thing, another reason why I think I hold this a special place for it is because this was my introduction to the Mad Max world, because this was the first Mad Max movie I ever saw. So I never saw it like how you said it's a troubled production. Other people, like Mike said, he had to see it a bunch of times to really start getting into it more. I loved it since the first time I saw it, and then I saw The Road War, which I thought was better. But, I'm going to make a bold statement, and I'm sure everybody's going to disagree with me. I'd rather watch this than the original Mad Max.
No, I don't.
I can
disagree
understand
with
why
that.
you would. I mean, I don't think Mad Max is
I
a
wouldn't
great
have a
movie. I think it's a
problem
very
with
good
that.
movie.
It's like Mad Max to me is like an origin story.
The Road Warrior
Whereas
to me.
I'm liking
An origin story.
Yeah, what the hell?
whatever.
The Road
It's a
Warrior
starter
to me
story.
is as good as it gets. The Road Warrior is.
Stop
is
picking
it.
on my vocabulary. I had a public school
I
education.
personally think because my bias towards the Road Warrior, I think that's the best of the three. However, I think all three are good on their own terms. On their own
Well,
merits.
more than good. More than good.
And
I
well-
think what George Miller does with each one of those movies is he sets a new precedent that more filmmakers should invest in stories, invest in characters, love their characters, and really enjoy originality, because I think that the Mad Max character was so wonderfully original, even though it came out of different genres, like the samurai genre and the Western genre. But he took these characters and molded them into, you know, I guess one of the hero, Joseph Campbell's one of the hero with many faces, but still, took him and added these elements. And each character, each time we see Max in each one of the three films, he takes on such a different persona.
Well, I want to give George Miller credit for another thing. Each one of these films has a distinct feel. They're all very different from each other, which you got to give him credit. He didn't really retread over the same movie over and over again. And also, I mean, I want you guys, if you can, check out A Boy and His Dog, because this is a film that I really think
A Boy and His Dog
George Miller
is
quite a
more
bit.
similar more to the Road Warrior. I
Yeah,
mean,
the world,
atmospherics,
the
not so
world.
much the Mad Max stuff.
Yeah, but the world that you see in The Road Warrior is
It's a very good
really,
movie.
A Boy and His Dog is excellent. You have to see that.
What's a little fallout?
I love that
And
movie.
skip any
I saw it in the
most
theater.
George Miller movies after
Since we have a
this.
little bit of time, should we comment on
Well, I
the
wanna
fourth
say-
Mad Max
Well, there's
film
one
that's
thing-
in production?
I do want to get into that, but I want to say
Fury
one thing.
Road.
After this film, Mel Gibson basically, you know, just was kind of embarrassed by the Mad Max phenomenon, which I think is stupid. I mean, it was the movie that made him who he is.
Yeah, because Bird on a Wire was such a precedent-making
God.
film.
Or Air America.
Yeah, and then I don't know why. And George Miller went on and actually decided to become a different type of director, since he was a
Yes.
medical doctor.
Oh, God.
Lorenzo's
He made a
Oil.
movie called Lorenzo's Oil, which got a lot of acclaim.
Baby.
I thought
Not
it was
a
okay.
lot.
Yeah, yes, it did. It got
Got
nominated for Oscars.
nominations. And
Yeah, don't forget. Yes, it did.
Didn't win.
And
But
then,
he-
of course,
he made Babe.
He didn't direct Babe, but he produced Babe, and then he directed the sequel, Pig in the
Pig in the
City.
City.
and then Happy Feet.
Yeah, and he basically. Oh, we're out of time, but
And Frozen Assets.
Mad Max
Fury
4,
Road.
Fury Road. Tom Hardy as Mad Max. Discuss.
I was originally, it was announced many years ago with Heath Ledger, and
You know
unfortunately it
what
didn't get
I
off
would
the
have
road.
liked to have seen in the lead role? I don't know, he might be a little too old now, but I would have liked to have seen Eric Bana. I think he would have been
I gotta say,
tremendous.
after seeing Bronson, I'm
I gotta agree
very
with him.
curious to see Tom Hardy
I have
tackle on this
Bronson
part.
sitting at home right now.
You
I
might
have
like
yet
it.
to see
If you
And
see
Tom
it,
Hardy's
watch
probably
it,
the same
see it.
height as Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, until next week, check out CineFiles blog and our YouTube page,
Tom
and
Hardy's that
I will
short?
see you. Thank
yeah.
you for joining.
Really?
It's like 5'9" or something like that.
Hi, I'm Edmund Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles. The show that allows you to eavesdrop on the conversation of fellow film fanatics.
What happened to your mustache?
I don't know.
Come on, fucker.
Unique, very much unlike anything at the time, and the film was Mad Max, which really showed an unusual post-apocalyptic viewing
not
of the
yet.
future. I mean, the
Not
beginnings
yet.
of it,
It
the
was,
beginnings of it, the beginnings of it, and
Maybe
of course,
yeah, I guess on the verge of a societal
basically the economy was about to collapse, and it introduced us, of course, to our very favorite anti-Semite, Mr. Mel Gibson.
There were no Jews in that film.
Yes, no Jews in that film, and actually, the film was, when
homosexuals.
it was released in America, unfortunately, was picked up by my favorite company of all time, American International, by Samuel Zarkov, and he decided
To dub it.
to redub it into English. But they were already speaking English, but they wanted a more American. So even though I think Mel Gibson spoke pretty good English at the time,
That's the only bad part of Mad Max is that fucking.
it's summertime's coming up. All right, well let's get into this show. You derail the fucking show every time, you assholes.
So we talking about Mad Max movies?
What are we
Or
talking
are we
about?
talking about
No.
Invasion of the Body
Let me
Snatchers?
introduce.
Which one?
This is Eric Cohen. This is Jeff Galashaw. And this guy over here, the snappy ass guy over here.
Is that the camera? That's the camera.
That guy?
All right, yeah, that guy over there.
I want to have a T-shirt made "Snappy Ass Guy." I would love that.
You're
What is
Fruity
your
is.
name, though?
Snappy Ass Guy.
Okay,
That's the snappy ass guy. In fact, I want that credit to be changed to snappy ass guy every time he comes up. Okay. Well, before I begin, let me say, let's.
Already began.
Well, before I get into this conversation, be sure to check out the CineFiles blog, which I know they will display here for us, and our YouTube page. If you're watching this on YouTube, get off your ass,
not
subscribe,
displaying it.
and rate this video. Okay? And we're also on Facebook individually. There's
There
a
we
fan
are.
page, everything. Please put this up throughout the show. We'd really appreciate it. And remind people to come visit us there. Anyway, let's get into this today. This was another request from you, the fans, on the Facebook discussion page. And by the way, we really appreciate all of your suggestions. We're taking some of them, and
But first, I want to issue a challenge to our fans. If we
Take
get
your stage.
1,000 subscribers, Edwin will regrow his mustache.
Yes.
yes,
Who is with me?
all right, I'll tell you what. We have 578
Oh, that's
subscribers
not
on YouTube right
so-
now. I will grow my mustache back if we
I
get
will
1,000.
shave my beard if we get 1,000 subscribers.
And Mike, you will button that shirt and hide that chest hair. if we
I
get
will
1,000.
wear. If we get 1,000 subscribers, I will wear turtlenecks for the next taping.
All right, very good. And Eric, what will you do?
I will do absolutely nothing.
All right, that's good enough for me.
He will wear sneakers the next statement.
No.
Mr.
You
Cohen.
she will change outfits. That will be good. That would be hysterical.
Oh, God.
Okay, well, let's get into this thing. You viewers demanded it, and we're here, and we're going to do it today. That is the Mad Max show. As you know,
And if we get 2,000 subscribers, Ed will finally get circumcised.
too late for that, my friend.
Too much information there.
Too much for that. Too much information for that. All right, well, let's get into this. All right, in 1970s, oh man, you just derailed me. In the 1970s, George Miller, a surgeon at a ER, actually wanted to fulfill his dream of becoming a filmmaker. And he took his money that he had, I guess, from being a doctor, which you make quite a bit of money if you're an emergency room surgeon, and he decided to create a film which, I gotta say, was very